Welcome to this video showing Blueprint's migration from Automation Anywhere version 11 to Microsoft Power Automate Desktop. To begin with, this is Blueprint. On the left side is where we present hierarchy from strategy through to execution. In the center is where we have visual representations of this information. And to the right-hand side, once we get into the demo, this is a collaboration area with discussions, reviews, formal sign-offs. And we begin on the left-hand side by selecting a customer journey. This is the first step on visualizing strategy through to execution. At the highest level could be a journey, could be a value stream, or another representation. And having this strategy through execution alignment becomes increasingly important as our customers try to automate larger, more complex end-to-end business processes. So this customer journey map can be created from scratch. It's a full editor within Blueprint, or can be imported from different external sources. And if we expand the hierarchy still further, we can see the business processes that support the different stages of that customer journey, and those are visualized on the diagram as the supporting processes across the bottom. To the far right-hand side, as I mentioned earlier, we can see collaborative discussions happening, and these can occur at any level in the hierarchy. And our customers use these discussions and the reviews and sign-offs to lock down that strategy. If I go one more level down, look at the onboarding business process. As you can see, we can express it in standard BPMN notation. Again, it can be authored or modified right within the product or imported from external sources. And expanding still one more level, we can see the various activities in that business process on the left-hand side. If I pick risk rating approval, we can now see its details. And this is the point really where automation begins. These are what we call digital blueprints. And digital blueprints add value in three ways. They're a visual representation of process flow. They support the tracing to enterprise dependencies, like business rules, regulations, controls. And they can provide the syntax of commands and parameters necessary to execute. And they do this in a way that's platform agnostic. As before, these can be created or modified right in the product, or they can be imported from external sources, in this case, process mining tools, for example. This is also the level where we start to distinguish between human activities, as you can see denoted by user, and those being performed by digital workers or assistants like this risk lookup. Expanding the hierarchy still further, I can go down and take a look at risk lookup details. And what I just did by going down is the equivalent of invoking a subtask, for example, in Automation Anywhere, or where one flow references another, say in the case of UiPath, or a flow calling a subflow in Power Automate Desktop. We are now at the lowest or leaf level. We're talking about commands like open spreadsheet, getting cells. So this strategy down to very detailed execution alignment provides a lot of context for that citizen developer. But we don't want to stop there. We want to provide full context. So we bring in as much information as possible that's relevant to the process being automated, like a PDD, for example. If these are pre-existing, they can be imported automatically and automatically broken down into their constituent sections, as you can see here. Or they can be authored from scratch right in the product alongside the process that's being automated. And even this lowest level can be authored from scratch in Blueprint or imported from external sources. In this case, it would be things like task capture or task mining tools that record human interaction with applications, or even importing existing automations from RPA tools. Now, ideally, companies would comprehensively manage strategy through execution visually, as you just saw in this demo, but honestly, most have not evolved to that point yet. But every one of them does have some form of center of excellence for automations. So we've separated this demo into visual strategy through execution that you just saw, and center of excellence that I'm going to show next. And it's this process, risk lookup, that's going to be the focal point of the next demo in center of excellence. It's just one of 112 bots that form the community of automations in that COE. So let's move on to that part. So here we can see an alternate hierarchy. In this case, it's an organization of center of excellence assets. Policies, for example, regulations that may apply in this sector, and of course, processes, including that risk lookup process that I spoke of earlier. Now, we imported this risk lookup automatically from Automation Anywhere. Here it is in Automation Anywhere, and this is what it looks like. Very detailed code-like. You can see things going on in Excel and some web interaction, for example. And it's here in Blueprint that we were able to import that from Automation Anywhere. And here it sits. Now, after importing, what most people would do in Blueprint is invoke a quality dashboard. And I'm just going to pick my Center of Excellence project, the processes specifically, and immediately I can see that I have 112 processes, aggregate summary beneath that, and citizen developers would use this dashboard to analyze the inventory. They could see the quality of each individual automation, the complexity of each automation, even relative usage. And it's with this information that they can make informed decisions about prioritization for migration. Now, one of the first things people will do after importing this process is to basically flip that switch and flip it over to be a storyboard, where we can visualize how this automation behaves, to better understand it as we try to migrate that behavior to the target RPA platform. Here we can see we're displaying system fees, and we're going to click on a link in the center, rendering a new screen, enter some data into a field, invoke a drop-down and pick a country, and so on. Storyboarding can really help with understanding what these automations are doing, which of course is the first step of a migration effort. Digital blueprints also provide the precision of commands and their parameters. So here, for example, if I pick the first step, Blueprint knows which application, which specific action, and the parameters that went along with it. And that's true of every step. Here we can see get cells has been mapped into a read range action, opening up a web browser with the parameter for the URL. And as mentioned before, this is an editor. We can add new steps if we want to, like delete cell, where I'll publish that step. Then I can choose which application. As you can see, we have a pretty exhaustive inventory of application types. I'll just click Excel, and for each application, as you can see, a broad inventory of the actions possible within that application. I'm going to delete cell, and in this case I'll just pick, in fact, an entire column, D. Now, policies, regulations, rules, controls, they all exist in a large enterprise and need to be complied with, and they all change over time. Those people who are creating these automations don't always know which apply. Intelligent recommendations is a capability that can help uncover applicable enterprise dependencies that would otherwise be missed. So here's a couple that it found. If I click the link, I can navigate to it, read the text of the regulation, decide if it applies. But let's just say I've done that, and I've decided not just that one, but a couple apply. With a click, these now are permanently traced to this particular process, including this one, the retail payment instrument regulation, for example, which if we expand, we can see is part of the FFIEC Retail Payment Systems booklet, a regulation we need to comply with. Blueprint also enables those who will implement these automations, and it does that in a number of ways. First, it does it by transforming the digital blueprint into a backlog of agile user stories, then automatically synchronizing that over to Jira to drive an agile development cycle. I've just generated all the stories all the way along, and you can pick any one of them and you can see what they look like. A well-formed complete user story with acceptance criteria in given when then format that is rendered into a .feature file or Gherkin that can drive test automation, including the visuals for before and after that user story. As mentioned, this is one of a backlog of user stories that you can see here that are synchronized in real time over to Jira, again to drive that development cycle. The other thing we do automatically is transform this digital blueprint into a complete set of functional tests. Once generated, this is what those tests look like. Again, complete set of functional tests describing the inputs, expected outcomes every step of the way, with scenarios covering every possible path through that process, giving 100% coverage. Finally, we're also then able to export this entire digital blueprint with contextual information over to a destination platform, including, in this case, Power Automate Desktop. Once we export it, it'll appear over in the Power Automate Desktop area, where you can edit it by invoking the Power Automate Desktop application. And here is the process sent over to Power Automate Desktop along with variables, ready for an RPA developer to finish it off, test, and deploy. And finally, back in Blueprint, this is a dashboard that our customers use to proactively manage change, helping to prevent break-fix cycles and to ensure compliance over time. Here's a list of notifications of changes that have occurred. We can filter those notifications based on type of change. Maybe I only care about regulatory changes, for example. Further filter based on severity. I only care about those that are of the highest importance. Here we can see that retail payment instrument regulation has changed. By clicking it, we instantly see an impact analysis, and that a change to that specific section of the regulation is potentially going to impact 6 out of the 112 automations that we have in our COE, including the risk lookup that we've been dealing with. At this point, we can then issue an instant alert to the owners of those bots, asking them to take action. Thank you for watching this video of how Blueprint migrates, in this case from AA over to Power Automate Desktop.